Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Heart to Heart Connection Summit. I am your host, Susan Peters, and today I have with me my guest, Masami Covey. Welcome, Masami.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad that you can join us. I met Masami when I was early into my grief. It was within the first 7 months after I had lost my husband, John. And Masami was on a summit that was like this, the first one that I had ever even known of. And it was called Journey Through Grief with Grace by Diana Previs, who is another speaker on this summit. But Masami spoke of loss and grief in a different way that really resonated with me because she spoke of how grief and loss affects our whole body. And I knew it affected my heart and it was affecting me in a lot of other ways, but I didn't realize how much it affects our entire bodies. And so I was fascinated to learn more, and I joined Masami and later with her husband Chris also, who will also be on the summit later, with learning more about my body and wanting to know how I can be healthy so that through my loss and through my grief, I can support myself more and learn how to go on with the rest of my life because I knew that I didn't want to just give up and just fall into nothingness because of my loss. I wanted to support myself and grow stronger and see who I can become and what my purpose was in life. And Masami has helped me to see how to do that in body, mind, and spirit. I Before I have her speak with us a little bit, I'd like to share a little bit about who she is. Masami leads women in rediscovering the wisdom of lunar cycles through menopause and beyond, applying a blend of Japanese moon medicine, physiology, nutritional science, and proven clinical modalities. With 25 plus years of clinical experience, Masami reveals the root causes of imbalance using both scientific analysis and intuitive insights to provide laser pointed guidance. Her whole person approach translates the subtle language of our bodies and offers practical tools to support health and vitality. Masami was born and raised in Japan in a bicultural family, and she draws from her East West blend of culture, language, science, and energy medicine. Masami holds an MS in international business, and her professional training and experience includes functional nutrition therapy, yoga therapy, positive neuroplasticity, Ayurveda, and applied linguistics. She is a faculty member of the Shift Network and a frequent speaker on health and energy summits, podcasts, and programs. And Masami has personally helped me with my own functional nutrition needs, and I am so grateful to you, Masami.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So I would like for you to share today a little bit about how does grief affect our whole body and how can we do some things to support ourselves?
Yes, I mean it's a big topic, isn't it? But the
Yes.
I've always known that grief and sadness and even anger and frustrations and so all these stages of loss, right? That we have many, many stages that we go through and they're not linear. Sometimes they are circular, sometimes there are spirals, we go through many, many different emotions and they do impact our bodies. And I was exposed to that truth when I was really, really young.
Mm.
So my mother ended up having this tremendous like cough that lasted years, for years. And it wasn't impacting any of us, like my siblings or my father. None of us were having things like a coughing thing that my mother was struggling
Mm.
with. And, I hadn't even thought about that in a long time, actually, till this moment, because I don't talk about it that much. But I must have been about 10 years old. And I watched my mom really, really struggle. But now looking back at the history of it, and it makes me tear up a little bit, is that that's when she lost her father.
Mm.
And, she was very close to him, but we lived in another island that we didn't have access that was easy. at that time to get on a bullet train, or, trains took a long time to get to this another island and of Japan. And so we barely saw our grandparents. So my mother didn't see him either much. And I'm going to kind of collect myself because I have not talked about this in so long. But the grief that I felt as a child who was a very sensitive and intuitive being that I am, and I always have been, I could sense something was so terribly wrong in her. And she started getting these like hives around her lungs and, just on the skin, on the surface. And then it took about 2 years for her to recover from it. And then, that memory kind of just, disappeared into or put aside. Maybe you don't lose these memories, but they got put aside in some box somewhere. And then years later, that I had always known that I wanted to work with people's physiology and bodies because I could read their bodies and I could sense what they're going through in their different organs and systems. But there was this one experience that I had that everybody actually that knows about the original Superman, the actor, the Christopher Reeve. And when he was in an accident during the filming and he became wheelchair bound, I became kind of interested in how he was supporting himself, and he was still very outgoing. He was still really involved in the world, and he had a beautiful marriage with his wife. But what I learned was that about literally 10 months after his death, she also died.
Mm.
And she died pretty fast of a lung cancer.
Mm.
And that was something that really struck something in me. And prior to that, I had been studying yoga therapy. I was studying Ayurveda. So I was very in Chinese medicine. And so I was aware how much lungs held. So lungs not just hold grief and sadness, but it holds even rage also. And even a sense of like, why is this happening to me, kind of a thing. How could this be happening to me? So it goes much, much deeper than the grief and sadness that we often talk about. There are many layers of sadness and grief that Sue, that you've been going through. There are times you probably just want to pound the table or the bed and say, how dare you leave me with this? That kind of anger. I've witnessed that with several of my clients that I became very close to, that I was at their bedside, and really watching their own transition from living to another realm of living, the spirit world. And all throughout that, I learned, but that incidence of Christopher Reeve's death and soon after his wife's death was something that confirmed in me that we are body, mind, spirit, and that our bodies remember. Our body is where we process. This physical body isn't just a vehicle or something that you just leave aside and attend to later, but this is the body that is processing everything from your grief, but everything from your shock, because sometimes the grief or the death comes to you in such a shocking way that one morning that person that you went to bed with is no longer there. That's a tremendous shock. And being in a shock of diagnosis that you may receive or your loved ones that will receive, and you go through this tremendous like, what do I do now? Your mind goes blank. I mean, we have so many words to describe how our bodies are feeling, right? So,
Yes.
I will pause after this, but the lungs aren't the only thing that's processing everything. Your tissues, your organs, your lymphatic system, your liver, your kidneys. Oh my goodness, kidneys. They're having to process so much of that grief as well. But grief, not only of your lifetime, but what you have inherited through your DNA in your cells. So the memory is held in all these different systems, but that memory is actually packaged and held even further by fascia.
Mm.
Fascia is this fabric of matrix that holds everything. Fascia is basically made out of fibrous things, but they're gel like water. And I think many of us do know by now the water has crystalline structures that has imprints of your memories. They hold crystalline memories. So the fascia holds all your records, not just your records, but your family history. It archives everything from the moment in your case, and Sue, in your case of the shock that you went through, your family's happy memories of the wedding, and then also the Valentine's Day coming, and then the death of your husband. And I mean, everything is archived, but it's not just yours, but your mother's archived information, your grandmother's, your grandfather's, so on and so forth. So, we do need to attend to our bodies, and it's not just to attend to your body, but your consciousness and the subconsciousness and all your memories require movement and attending to the body, because change can only happen when you attend to your physical body that holds all your history.
Yeah, wow. So much you said in that just that little bit of time, it's so important how we can just paying attention to these things in our lives and knowing about them, because I didn't even know about all of these things until you introduced them to me, and I'm so appreciative to be able to go deeper, because like you said, there's many layers that we need to go through to heal. It's not a simple process, and when we tend to our bodies, that really helps. I know you said for the title of this talk for the summit, it was "Move Your Fascia, Transform Your Dreams." So I'm curious how how can we move our fascia, and how is it tied to transforming our dreams to make our lives better and step
Right.
forward too? Because you said movement, right?
Right. We have to move this body. And the movements are not just going for a walk and maybe doing some, high intensity exercises. I mean, those are very important too. But movements in terms of moving the fluids, movements in terms of making sure your bile is flowing through that the liver is making, about 1 to 1.5 quarts of the bile that the liver is making, so that the bile can collect toxicity and or emotions or memories, and you can discard them. Those are movements. So getting constipated or congested or stagnation, any of those things that could show up in your eyes, ears, nose, sinus cavities, I mean, huge. It's wrapped in fascia also. Your brain is wrapped in fascia, so you got to make sure your brain is flowing. So there are a lot of things, but how's that transform? And in that movement of the fascia can transform your dreams, is that every time you move, every time you're conscious of these movements, you can actually make corrections to the book that you've been living with. The pages of your book that you have been writing is your fascia. So think of your fascia as the pages of your book. And we
Mm.
all come into not an empty book. We all come with already parts of your books, the chapters already written. I think a lot of us thought that the new birth, new life is like a clean slate. And I do not see it that way, because we do carry the genetic makeup of our father and our mother, and then so on and so forth. You go back enough, we have so many layers of the pages that we already came in with. But when you can begin to consciously move your system, attend to the fascial layers are holding your entire being. And it could just be as simply as like pressing your palms.
Mm.
That is moving your fascia, because you're making an indentation to that fascia. That alone. And then when you think about it, when you're pushing your palm, you could even say, what am I gripping onto? You
Mm.
know, what am I so tightly holding onto? And then you consciously open your hands and you press on that area and you work on your fascia gradually and slowly. You can actually let go of some of these really gripping, holding on to kind of emotions or stories or old patterns. Like I said, your fascia is archiving everything that's happened. All your memories that you can't even recall, they're held in you. So, when you do that, you can rewrite your stories. When you could rewrite your stories, you can actually manifest dreams that you didn't even know existed, even. And you're one of those people that have shown that, because one thing, Sue, that I have always admired about you is your sincerity, your sense of, at times it shows up like almost like a young little child, a young girl. So you could see it as an innocence, but the purity that you brought into to wanting to lean in. Maybe there's part of desperation, because you felt like, I can't keep sitting in the darkness of my own living room, not knowing how to take myself forward. But the fact that there's a combination of your inner beautiful light, sincerity, the young child that was in you that woke up somehow and said, we're going to do this together. Whatever that may be, you leaned into the movements, the fascia, breathing. You started coming back to your body, and look where you're at today. So you are transforming your life, and you're an inspiration to many of us, all of us that are watching this.
Oh, thank you so much, Masami, and thank you for helping to teach me some of these things so that I could step forward and move and not stay stuck, because staying stuck is no fun. And now that I'm moving forward and transforming, I want to be able to share this with other people, because grief and loss does affect people and helps and keeps them stuck sometimes. And I want people to know that is hope, there is possibility, and the key is just start moving and start opening yourselves to new things, because you have exposed me to so many new thoughts and ways of looking at things and ways to look at my body that I never knew. And it's opened me to a whole new world, which has also expanded me so much more too, that it makes me want to live. I mean, there was one point when John died that I was like, well, now I just have to survive till I die. And you've helped me to realize, no, 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 life is such a gift. And it's so beautiful to be alive in this body that we have. And when you said that the very first time I heard you say that, it was like, wow, I almost cried, because, we take our bodies for granted. And you helped me to see that our bodies are so beautiful and important. And I love this about the fascia, and how just taking care of it. I mean, even just pressing and holding on our hand, it's like holding ourselves, right? It's like self-care is so important. And that's another thing you've taught me too, is to take time, like with the moon cycles that you have taught me, that the moon has its rhythms, the sun has its rhythms, the earth has its rhythms and seasons, and so does our bodies. And if we follow that, we can be happier, we can be healthier, and we can live lives more on purpose, because then we're more content in our own bodies, and we embrace ourselves more. And then we also can love each other more too, because it's helped me to see how important everybody's lives are, not just my own, but each of our bodies are important, and each of us has different gifts to share. And the more that we can bring out the best in ourselves through our bodies, I think that's awesome.
Right. And, I wanted to just kind of put a little PS on the movement side, because when you go through tremendous shock to your system, there are times that you can't even get out of bed. Okay. But that's when you let the fascia hold you,
Mhm.
because the fascia is always hugging you. And
Mhm.
sometimes the fascia's job is to protect you. Not sometimes. Fascia's job is to protect you. So you may find yourself stiffening up or tightening up, or you're curling up into a fetal position. Well, that's because your fascia, your body does not know how to open it right now. But that's in turn your inner wisdom saying, I can't. I need to cocoon myself. So there's that movement too. Cocooning and in that fetal position is also a movement. So don't think of movement as, oh, I must call my friends and I got to start going for a walk. No, there are times you do not want to speak to a soul because you are so deeply grieving. You cannot even be touched except by your own hands, you know? So know that too. So there's like the lunar cycle, the moon cycles that I speak so much about, is that there's a time for movements and there's time for stillness. There are times when we are just only moving by the heartbeat. That's it. And then our bodies are so still that nothing seems to be moving. But that is not true. There's things that are happening inside. It's at the very, very subtle level. So respect whatever the range of the movements I'm talking about, because
Yeah.
stillness is still even a form of movements in a way, but you're just being held. You are holding yourself. So that's one thing that I wanted to say about that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that in too, because that is important, and that's another thing you teach in the with the moon and the new moon cycle. That's the time, to go into the darkness and the womb space, which also helped me because you had also talked about the liminal space, and when we have that quiet space, especially for me, that's in the morning when I first wake up, and you're not quite awake yet. And that was the one thing that helped me to realize by staying in that stillness instead of just trying to get out of bed and start going and thinking I had to do things. I was actually able to understand that I got the message that John, when he died, became like my compost. And so it's like we were kind of both buried together with the seed, and because death just takes you down, you can't, you don't even have a choice. It just takes you down, and it's like you're buried, but then that person's compost helps us to start growing again. And when I realized that, it was like an aha moment. And it was because I did take the time, because you recommended that we need to sit and take that stillness and that time. And it made all the difference in my thought process and my perception of how I saw death. And I appreciate that too.
Gorgeous, gorgeous. That I love that image of the compost. You know, the composted soil smells so good once it becomes a soil. But to get to that beautiful soil that you can plant your vegetables with, your flower garden with, takes time. Takes stirring, takes weather, takes the sun beating on it, takes worms doing their jobs, that takes time. So yeah, there's a time of fallow, the fields should not always be planted and then stirred up. And then once the seed's been planted, you don't want to go and dig it up every morning and say, are you ready yet? So there's a natural season to grief as well. And, I think a lot of people that have done interviews with me about grief and sadness, they always ask me questions like, so what kind of a grief and sadness? The fact is, I can sit here and list all the grief and sadness that I've been through. You know, I would say I've been prepared to be where I am today because of all that.
Mm.
So much loss and so many losses that I have been through in my life. And it's no longer important for me to list those out. It's because, like you said, they're composting beautifully for me, and they have become this gorgeous soil that feeds me as a tree. It gives me the nutrients I need. So I don't need to list out all of it. If you ask me, I would probably say yes. It's like, have you lost anybody? Yes. Have you, lost your country? Yes. Have you been through divorce? Yes. Have you lost the abilities of your bodies, some physical losses? Yes. I mean, you name it, right? But the fact is they are all getting tumbled in my tumbler of the raw materials, and they are every day, every year that passes by, they become golden, elixir for me to feed who I am, because that soil is almost like an envious level soil for me. That could be sold per package for a very expensive price, because that my composted soil is wonderful.
Yeah, and I have to I thank you for stepping forward, even through your losses to create new dreams, because you step forward in new dreams, you're touching so many lives right now. and so giving other people a chance to work through their losses and griefs and problems and challenges and traumas, because your courage has inspired so many things to help us. One thing I would like to say is that because of Masami, I was able to join in a lot of her groups. I did a lung retreat with her. They had a waymaking retreat and an April Moon journey that we went on. That also connected me with other people on the journey. And I felt that that was also another step for my healing because it wasn't specifically related to grief or loss at all, any of those. But it helped me to still address it in new ways, but with a group within a group. And I do think that's so important that we connect with each other and have that chance to collaborate with each other and remind each other how important we each are, and what other things we're doing that might help somebody else on the journey. Just somebody's little sentence that they say might make a huge difference for somebody, and that it's so important to do that. What are your thoughts on how we can use that connection and collaboration to help each other?
Well, I think you have said that, and then I think we can read almost any newspapers these days, or newspapers, maybe nobody reads newspapers, but if you look up anything about grief and sadness and then the increase in mental health, that it's not deterioration of a mental health, what I meant, in teenagers and all across age groups. This isn't just happening to only the younger generations or a certain age group. It's just happening all across the board. One is because we are still reeling, or maybe unfolding and trying to heal from COVID, where we were isolated, where we had to speak to each other through glass or a mask, or for whatever purpose those served. I'm not here to argue, but the fact is we are seeing tremendous challenges with younger generations. When we hear about, because we were in the school system for a long time, my husband and I were, so we hear about 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds having a hard time. And the other day I heard this really gorgeous piece on Colorado Public Radio that I had my husband sit with me and listen, and it just made my heart sing. It was basically at a kindergarten, these little kids are about, so preschoolers and kindergartners, so like 3 to 5-year-olds or something like that. So they are the COVID babies. And so they didn't get to express or learn other people's expressions very well because of the masked culture that we were in. And so what they did is that a lot of these kids did not get to go to live concerts. They didn't have anything live that was going on. So what they did in this one school in Colorado and Denver area, they invited these 3 to 5-year-olds, and they have this classical music, celloist and violinist and flute. And they were like a group of Colorado Chamber of Orchestra that they're volunteering to go to these different places and then play. And so it's a Colorado Public Radio, so it was only in audio, but you could just kind of imagine the kids were just giggling and running around. And when they started to do these, like a certain cellos that going like really really fast motions and sound of bumblebees, they were just running around, and they were just kind of telling us what was happening, the kids screaming and jumping and dancing with each other. And then, but the last part, they actually played the Beethoven's Fifth Piano Sonata part. And the teacher was recording this, was happening. And she said, there was this one really quiet girl. She's a little bit smaller than the rest of the group, and she's always very, very quiet. She doesn't really say much, but she stood up, and she was the only one that stood up at that very quiet part of the piece. And I guess she was starting to twirl. She was starting to dance in her own way, swaying and twirling by herself. And that just made me cry.
Yeah.
Both of us looked at each other and said, oh my God, I'm so glad we listened to this. that community is important, and a community of one another that we can actually see each other, not just at Zoom, but actually physically. But also to community doesn't just end at the Zoom calls, but maybe attending concerts like that. Just even hearing something like that, I felt like I took a part in that gorgeous transformation that these little kids were
Yeah.
going through. And so there are a lot of good that's coming out of the darkness period that we all went through. So that's what I think community provides us, whatever that community may be. It might be a meditation group in the morning, it might be a church picnic that you do on Sunday afternoons, it may be that you have a community of people that go and pick up trash, or it could be the community of these musicians that are setting aside their time for free and going to play for these kids that have never had a live music experiences.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm answering your questions or not, but many ways to be creative, many ways to fulfill the dream of supporting one another. It could be literally going to school and knocking on the door and say, "Hey, I know how to play a flute. I know how to play piano. Can I come and play that?"
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. I love all that you said because it is so important. And again, to step out of our normal routines, and try something different, and get a new perspective, a new focus, and a little bit of fun in your life too. Um, I kind of had that experience because since I decided to marry my heart and I took myself on a heart honeymoon, I got to share my story with other people and started realizing how important that was, that connection to pure strangers that I didn't even know. And then all of a sudden we had a connection because we shared our stories together. And it really made a huge difference in my life, connecting in new ways like that, that I was scared to do before, but I went out of my comfort zone and said, you know what? I'm going to do this and try this. And I met the most beautiful people and had the most beautiful experiences. And some of it was quiet in nature. I took walks down the river and heard lots of birds, and smelled the flowers that were blooming. And some of it was with people and interacting and hearing their stories. I just a curious, fun question. When I first told you that I was marrying my heart, just curious what your thoughts were about my little story.
Well, number one, Chris and I were both proud of you. That's what we felt. And it happened during Chris's deep dive course that he was teaching a small group of us, about really working through our archetypes and in our patterns and deep diving into that. And when you announced that during that program, we both really felt
Mm,
blessed to be in your presence and in your, like I said, your pure heart. You didn't just marry your heart, but you really married the pureness of
mm,
what life is. The crystalline structure of life that is always shining and showing us the way. So, yeah, really, really proud of you, Sue, for how far you've come and how far you've challenged yourself and how far you have pushed yourself, and also how much you've been honoring who you are.
mm. Thanks. And I'm so honored to have had you and Chris as part of my journey, and the one who has led me to so many people, because without you, I wouldn't have met all the rest of the people on the summit. Diana introduced me to you from her summit, and then you introduced me to so many more people, and I will never ever uh I will take that with me for the rest of my life because it has helped me create new dreams that I never even considered, much less thought possible. So thank you for leading me on such beautiful paths and continuing to walk with me. I also, well, I'll save this for the end because first I know we're getting to the end of our time, but um, I want to know if you have any other things that you would like to share about what you would like, how you would like to serve other people and how you help them through their dreams. And also, I know you have a free gift to share, and if you would like to share that with any, what the parts of all of that. I'm getting
Well,
choked up. I'm sorry.
No, no, it's all right. I love it that we can be so raw and honest and
Yeah,
pure with each other. You know, I
you
think
touched my heart.
that's what you bring out to the world. And so, when I want to say is that these days I notice this a lot, when you go and shop somewhere and then the clerk will give you a receipt or something, and then I would say thank you. I love saying thank you.
Mhm,
But I've noticed that the people will just go, uh-huh, sure. You know, their answer is never, you are welcome.
mhm,
So I want to say that to you, Sue.
mm,
You are very welcome. You're welcome.
no,
And we really want to stop and really chew on those two words or three words. You are welcome,
mm,
because you're always welcome to enter into my field of fascia. You're more than always welcome to come and knock on our door. Okay. Because you're welcome.
mm,
Okay. That's what I want to say to you, for you thanking me and Chris. Yeah. And the free gift is kind of self explanatory, but I'm all about the physiology and body and how to support yourself. And there's so much out there in terms of information. Do this, don't do that, take this, don't take that. There's just, we are swimming in overwhelming amount of information. So we decided to create just this recording that's been really serving a lot of people. And I wanted to continue to serve your audience on how to declutter and create more space with which nutrient and nutritional supplements that you want to take to support your being. So it's about decluttering your supplements. And we honed in on 6 supplements. You don't have to take all 6 either. I would say maybe first 3 are very important though. But prioritize how to take care of yourself so that you can process grief, and there will be more challenges, right? The universe has guaranteed us of that. If you're on this earth, we will grieve again, but we get to grieve
yeah.
because we have this pure heart. It's a pleasure. It sounds weird. And it's a beautiful gift that we have the heart big enough to grieve. And one thing I want to say, one more thing, is that know that the universe doesn't just give you grieving and sadness and losses, but the universe always gives you, in Buddhist traditions, we call it the refuge.
Mm,
It's called the inner refuge. So I highly recommend you look that up. I've done a lot of videos on that too, but find your inner refuge.
mm,
Could be the woods, could be a single tree that you really love to go visit. It could be something that you want to wear, a scarf that you want to wrap around your neck. It doesn't matter, but find your inner refuge, because we're always balanced between the yin and yang, the waxing moon and a waning moon. We don't always have challenges because we have the same amount of refuge inside us to balance us always, so we can walk the middle way.
mm. So beautiful, Masami. I just love everything you teach me, and I take it right to my heart, and it's helped my heart to expand so much. And the last thing I do want to close with is, this is another thing Masami taught me: to be grateful, and to be grateful for our lives, to be grateful for each other, to be grateful for the food that we eat. And I remember you specifically sharing with us. I hope I say it correctly, but in Japanese you call it itadakimasu. Is that it?
You
And
said it perfectly.
oh, good. And I say this every day when I eat, because Masami said it's so important when we eat our food to not only be grateful for the food we eat, but those who brought it to us, the ground that gave it to us, and that we're even able to eat it with our own bodies too. And so every day, I say it not even just food though. I say it with people, and when I hear something beautiful like what you just said, I'll step away and I'll say itadakimasu, itadakimasu, itadakimasu. And I am so grateful that you taught me that, and grateful to be alive. Thank you for such a beautiful gift, Miss Sami, of the gift of you.
You're welcome, Sue.
Thank you. I accept it. And thank you, all of you, for listening today. I'm getting choked up again, but I appreciate all of you beautiful listeners for joining in with us. And I wish you well on your journey of health and wellness. And thank you again, Masami.